Aujourd'hui, we're going to talk about three things. First of all, why it is that English speakers struggle, especially at the beginning of their French journey, to have French speakers actually speak to them in French. Second, we're going to talk about 4 key phrases that drastically increase the chances of your conversation continuing in French and not switching back to English. And lastly, we're going to briefly talk about how speaking French increases your self-confidence and therefore makes you a better version of yourself. So if all that sounds interesting, stick around. C'est parti! Salut tout le monde, welcome to a brand new video here on my channel. Just before we get started, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind you that if you do enjoy what you see here on the channel, go ahead and click on that big red subscribe button down below. Et du coup, why is it that us English speakers struggle to get French people to speak to us in French when we've launched a conversation in French? Well, there are a few reasons. The first one being that they simply don't want to waste their time. They want things to go as smoothly as possible. This is extremely true in the case of a professional interaction. A lot of people now do speak English and they would rather use their broken or imperfect English to help you in the conversation and the exchange rather than wait for you patiently while you think and get your words out. Another one is young people now love to speak English because everything around them in the media, movies, TV, posters, music is in English, and so they actually enjoy it. So it's nothing to do with your level of French being poor. They are individuals themselves and they want to speak to you in English. And of course, thirdly, we can't ignore the fact that yes, your level is too low for the other person to want to speak to you in French. That's just quite logical. We all have to start somewhere and we can't expect people to put up with us and our low level. All of these things will happen outside of a language learning environment and sometimes within a language learning environment, if I'm being honest, but it's much more likely to be the case outside of a language learning environment. And there is one constant: you control what language you use to speak. Now, some learners already possess the character and the determination to continue speaking in French even when the person to whom they're speaking starts talking back in English. But I find these people are usually from a non-English speaking country, and I think this is because they have developed in their mind growing up that they will someday have to learn another language, probably English, to further their career prospects or to achieve some of their goals in life. Growing up in an English speaking country, we just simply don't have that because we think everyone speaks our language. And I think that pays dividends here for them in that they've already got this tough character to push through and get them back in the conversation. English speakers, like myself included, tend to need to practice to develop that character and to develop that confidence with the language. So if you're struggling with your confidence when speaking French, there are 2 things you can do. First of all, put yourself in a language learning environment in which you are comfortable as soon as possible and as often as possible, either through language exchanges or by one-on-one classes. I've got some links to some great resources down below in the description, so go ahead and check them out. Secondly, learn the 4 key phrases I'm going to go through in this very next part to help you get those conversations which have slipped into English back into French. Just want to say one more thing before we go into that list, and that is, in the real world you will meet people who are extremely patient, and no matter what your level is, they will speak to you in French. That is, in my experience, the exception to the rule, of course. I have been lucky enough to meet those people and they really helped me along in my journey and with my confidence. But the vast majority of people in France are not there to help someone learn French, so they will get frustrated, they will be impatient, and they may speak to you in English. You just got to accept it and deal with it. Keep practicing in your favorite language learning environment, and do keep putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, and I promise you, you will see an improvement in how you react over time. Je te promets. Excuses never help. even if it is a bit cathartic to have a bitch and a moan. It's tangible actions which move us forward and see us improve. Mais les Français adorent râler, donc... Alors, I think I've rambled on enough in that first part. So here is the list of these 4 key phrases you're going to learn which are going to dramatically increase your chances of getting a conversation back into French, or even start a conversation in French and not look back. They're all incredibly straightforward, but instead of saying them in English, of course you're going to be learning them in French. Trying to remember these phrases will mean you will think about them. The more you think in French, the more natural it feels. And the more natural it feels, the more likely you are to have the confidence to go out and speak them and speak the language. Numéro 1 is how to say what does X mean, where X is any word you like. You're going to say, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Followed by the word you don't understand. Perhaps in the conversation, you have heard a word you don't understand, and it's only that word you need to understand in order to continue the conversation. Now, what happens normally if you ask that question in English, you're going to get the response back in English and the rest of the conversation is going to go on in English. But if you learn this question in French, you're going to get an answer back in French, and that's a great feeling. And get used to saying it a lot, because me, even though I've been here since 2015, I still use it about 100 times a day. And a more informal way to ask this is ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire quoi? When I think of when I used this for the first time, it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. I was in a French class in Paris and I heard some people saying it, and I had enough of the logic in my mind to understand the individual words and put it together and the way it was being used in the classroom. And I was thinking, that means what does it mean? What does it mean? That's so useful because, yeah, like I say, hundreds of times a day, especially at the lower levels, you're thinking, what does that word mean? What does that word mean? What does that word mean? And just the simple act of saying it in French rather than English kept conversations going for me in French. And for those of you like me who like dissecting things, we can look at ça veut dire quoi, for example, word by word, and we can see that it says ça, which is it, this or that, veut, want, and dire, to say. It wants to say quoi, it wants to say what. So in French, when you talk about something meaning something or someone meaning something, you're saying they want to say something, they want to say something. And when you think about it, that totally makes sense. Numéro 2 is gonna be I don't understand. Obviously, I don't have to explain this to you how useful this is. You're gonna think it more than you're gonna say it, but I'm gonna challenge you to say it even more. And you're not gonna say it in English. And I'm sure you know je ne comprends pas. Je ne comprends pas, and you may know je comprends pas when we drop the ne, which is super, super common in everyday French. But actually I found that the French themselves, if they don't understand something, they're more inclined, they're more likely to say j'ai pas compris or je n'ai pas compris. So they use the past tense here. So get into the habit of saying je n'ai pas compris with qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Je n'ai pas compris. And then when they think, oh, what doesn't he understand? You've already started saying qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Je n'ai pas compris. Désolé, je n'ai pas compris. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire ça? Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire? Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire? What do you mean? Number 3 is asking people to repeat what they've said more slowly. And you would say, est-ce que tu peux répéter plus doucement, s'il te plaît? Est-ce que tu peux répéter plus doucement, s'il te plaît? And if you're in a more formal situation or you're not sure if you can get away with using tu, then of course with vous, it would be, est-ce que vous pouvez répéter plus doucement, s'il vous plaît? Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter plus doucement, s'il vous plaît? Now, if you look up slowly in the dictionary, you're going to find lentement, lentement. But the advantage of being here on the ground in France is I can tell you that natives actually prefer to hear doucement, you know? It actually, ironically, it actually feels nicer to them. Doucement, which means softly, you know, or gently. You say, so really, literally, you're saying, can you repeat that more gently, please, more softly? And apparently it comes across better to them, especially in a non-language learner environment. Now, if you're at an intermediate level and you're still with us, still watching this video, first of all, thank you. This isn't just aimed towards beginners. And you're thinking, oh, that's actually quite an easy phrase. Why is he telling us about that and also the other two? Well, This one I found is actually quite difficult to get in when you're speaking to someone in the real world, so someone outside of a language learning environment. Perhaps you're at the bank, for example, and they want to natter away and they're not going to give you the time to explain yourself, say what you want to say. This phrase I actually found quite difficult to get out because I was thinking about every word and putting it in the right order. So the more you practice this, the better. Obviously it goes for everything, but this one in particular I found harder to stick in my mind. Can you repeat that more softly, please? And the last one, numéro 4, is the translation of asking someone if they mind if, and then whatever else you want to do. Do you mind if I sit here? Do you mind if we speak in French? Do you mind if we go back to French? Now, you're going to say, est-ce que ça te dérange si? Est-ce que ça te dérange si? Blah, blah, blah. Est-ce que ça te dérange si on passe en français? Ou est-ce que ça te dérange si on repasse en français? Do you mind if we switch to French? Or do you mind if we switch back to French? And like with the other ones I've gone through, you can say est-ce que, or you can just use the statement form. Ça te dérange si? As long as you use that upward inflection, it's a question, it's all fine. And I found this one of the best examples really of showing your assertiveness, and as you build your confidence, when you get into that situation where the conversation has switched to English and you've spoken a bit too much English already, you're keen to get back on track and get your French practice in. The assertive person will say something like, do you mind if we switch to French? Ça te dérange si on repasse en français? Because you've taken that bold step to interject and say, I want to speak to you in French. I speak English every day of my life. Est-ce que ça te dérange actually translates directly to does it bother you? Does it bother you if? And you can use it for that, but in this context, it's used by all French people to mean do you mind if? Do you mind if? It's a virtuous cycle. Those little words and phrases that you might think are unimportant as you search for the real reason why you're struggling to speak French or why you can't speak French actually play a great role in building up your confidence to actually push through those barriers and those obstacles that we all reach as language learners. Imagine you're speaking to a French person and you stop to find your words and you take more than a few seconds. They're going to switch and speak to you in English. Before, you'd either frantically search for a few words of protest or you'd give up and continue the conversation in English because it's more polite and it's easier. In the long run, this is harmful because habit building takes a long time, and every time you switch back to English, you're taking X number of steps backwards. If you could just say, désolé, mais est-ce que ça te dérange si on passe en français? Then rather than have another English conversation, you get a few more minutes of precious practice, or who knows, it could turn into an hour. Wouldn't you be more confident after that? Then you'd say something like that every single time until it barely ever happened again. And of course, then you'd be further along on your journey to being a competent French speaker. Of course you'd say it. Bien sûr. We need confidence to speak in French and to get native French speakers to speak to us in French and not English. However, being spoken to in English never completely goes away because there are various reasons why they might do it. Even though I've been here since 2015, it certainly still happens to me from time to time. So set yourself up for success by learning these much needed phrases. A more confident you is a happier you. Les petits trucs font la différence. Learning a language and being happier. Ça c'est de faire d'une pierre deux coups, ou quoi? So, encore une fois, just to summarize, we saw qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, ou ça veut dire quoi? We saw je n'ai pas compris, or j'ai pas compris. Est-ce que tu peux répéter plus doucement, s'il te plaît? Est-ce que tu peux répéter plus doucement, s'il te plaît? And est-ce que ça te dérange si? Est-ce que ça te dérange si? Voila, that's all I have for now. I do truly believe that learning French, if we're committed, forces us to encounter uncomfortable situations, like the ones we encounter when speaking. So in the end, we're stronger, more confident versions of ourselves, and that can only be a good thing. I'd love to know whether or not you'd like to see more videos on how French can be a useful tool for personal development. Or do you just prefer videos on words and phrases? Do let me know down in the comments below. Comme d'habitude, tout le monde, merci de regarder. If you did enjoy the video, please don't hesitate to go down below and give it a thumbs up. If you're new around here, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're growing fast around here and I want you along for the ride. Check out my Instagram channel for daily discussion on the French language. A link is down in the description below the video. Mais jusqu'à la prochaine fois, merci encore de regarder. Bon français. Ciao.